intelligence the current happenings in your country, you are going the wrong directions. So I see no cry. If this bill is being brought for us here, that there must be an authority, in as much as citizens should have access to information, freedom of expression and freedom of opinion should be guaranteed. But there should be a checks and balances. People should not be only requesting, not taking the responsibility as well. There must be a check and balances to put in place, whereby in as much as you have the right to have information, to have access to information, but there should be an agency or institution looking after this information, because information can be disruptive. One single communication can turn this country into flame. So such information are very vital for a state to keep putting a day-to-day surveillance on them. So in that regard, I think it is not just by manning soldiers, paramilitaries, police force, and co. And if you also go through the section 138A, there is no criminal offense that is inserted there that if you are found these are the penalties. But what is being given to us is that there must be an authority that will really help the state to make sure that the state is aware, the state knows how these information are filtered down, where are they used. So therefore, I think this comes at the right time. Democracy comes with responsibility and it has a price to pay. These are some of the prices of democracy that you cannot shy away from. What is really important is for us to understand that these also contribute, these surveillance mechanisms, this monitoring and this intercepting, they contribute heavily in the restoration of the peace and tranquility of this country. This surveillance also goes a long way in terms of averting any threat that might be imposed on this country as a nation. And this surveillance also, or monitoring, will also make sure that we as a country remain sovereign. So therefore, I think going by the provision of section 207 and 208, if you look at it, it says that these are subject to laws which are reasonably required in a democratic society in the interest of the national security, public order, and public moralities, and for the purpose of protecting and regulating the rights and freedom of others. The state must be seen doing that, to protect the rights and interests of others. So therefore, it means that the state should be seen operating as a referee. Once, where your right picks up or where your right ends, that's where another person's right begins. So therefore, if the state is not there to make sure that there are checks and balances and serve as a referee to protect the right of the weak or others, then the state is not doing justice to the nation. So on that note, I don't want to take more time of the assembly. I just want to say I give my blessings, and we hope that we have a thorough introduction at the committee stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Latit Kunda Sabiju.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. Let me also join the rest of my colleagues to observe this very important bill. Well, I won't say that I'm giving my blessing to the bill yet, because I believe this is something that we need to look at very, very, very well. we need to commit it to the committees, and then we look at it. Because if you look at what they say, the objects and reasons, they say this bill seeks to amend the Information and Communication Act to inter-align, provide adequate checks and procedures for monitoring, intercepting, and storing of information into communication for surveillance purposes. What I want to ask is that if you say monitoring, what are we going to monitor, and how are we going to do this monitoring? I think this is something that is very, very important. We all should be asking. If you want to monitor, what kind of information did you want to monitor? And how are we going to monitor this information is important. If we went further to say intercept, what are you going to intercept? What are the kind of information that you're going to intercept? We need to know those kind of information that are going to be intercepted before we say, yes, I support the bill or I didn't support the bill. If I know all these things, if they are clear to me, then I will be able to make a judgment. Because what we have to understand here, look, I am serving as a member of parliament for Latrikunda Sabiji, someone sitting at home using the Facebook access, using social media. We have to do something that will not hurt me and that will not also hurt someone who is using the social media. But it has to be based on the fact, as honorable member for Latrikunda says. We have to protect everybody. This is not a matter of protecting those who work in the government, or this is not the matter of going against those using the social media. But what we should look at here is the national interest. That should be the supreme, that should be our supreme interest here. Because looking at these things, sometimes we need to know, we should be clear, how are we going to do it? Honorable member for Banyan says that we need to have the Parent Act. I think that Parent Act, having it in place, is going to help us a lot. Most of us, we didn't have access to the Parent Act. So, you know, if I want to say that I'm going to support the bill, if I want to say that I'm going against the bill without knowing the details of the bill, I might make a mistake. But what I will do, I will just support the bill when we go to the committee stage and we know every detail of the bill. Then from there, I'll be able to give my blessing to say yes or no. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I think we'll endeavor to make copies available. Thank you. Central Badibu, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Speaker, the first part of the objective of the bill, the object, is not well clear to us because it seems like denial of rights, as I'm seeing. And section 138, the procedure for interception, a national security agency or investigating authority under section 138, which intends to monitor, intercept, store information or intrude into communication for surveillance purposes, shall make an application to High Court prior to doing so. Madam Speaker, if you go to the Constitution, section 17, page 21, I quote, fundamental rights and freedoms. The fundamental human rights and freedoms enshrined in this chapter shall be respected and upheld by all organs of the executive and its agencies, the legislature, and where applicable to them, by all natural and legal persons in the Gambia, and shall be enforceable by the courts in accordance with this constitution. Madam Speaker, if you go further, he said every person in the Gambia, whatever his or her race, color, gender, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, and other status, shall be entitled to the fundamental human rights and freedoms of the individual contained in this chapter, but subject to respect for the rights and freedoms of others and for the public interest. Madam Speaker, by looking at this bill, the first part of the bill, its object, as far as I'm concerned, is unconstitutional. Yes. Madam Speaker, by going further, go to section 23 of the same constitution, page 25, privacy, subsection 1, no person shall be subject to interference with the privacy of his or her home, correspondence, or communication, except as it is in accordance with law and is necessary in a democratic state, society, in the interest of national security, public safety, or economic well-being of the country, for the protection of health or morals, for the prevention of disorder or crime, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. Are we in that state? I don't think there is need for it now. The circumstances where we live in now there's no need for such a bill. Yes, but there is a need to have a bill, that is going to repeal the draconian law that we have in our laws. We all will give our blessings to that. But for the first part, we see it as a law. So, and Madam Speaker, my colleagues, please, let us not have laws that, there are things that are embedded in, only to, have a smooth sailing. At the end of the day, we come back again, we want to repeal it. We cannot be only repeal it. Let us not accept it. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much. Upper Salum.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. First, I must apologize for breaking our own rule. Maybe you didn't even catch, but our standing order doesn't actually allow me to use this laptop here. But I have to make reference to the previous bills which I downloaded on my laptop, so I want to make reference to it. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. When I look at this bill, basically it's two things it's trying to do. One is to correct an anomaly in the current Communication Act, and number two, to delete or to remove some draconian laws that most of us actually have been talking about since 2017. Now, currently, if you allow me, Honorable Speaker, to read from the Communication Act, Section 138.1, it says the national security agencies and investigating authorities may monitor, intercept, and store communications, and the authority, when exercising its powers conferred relating to the frequency of monitoring, or may otherwise intrude communication for surveillance purposes. That's the current law of this country. What this bill, my understanding with the objects, is actually trying to correct that. Because what happened is there is no proper procedure in doing all those things there. And that's the reason why when you look at 138A, it basically clearly tells you the procedures that needs to be followed before this thing can be done. Because right now it's just done, and I don't think in a democratic society, this is actually a good law that we currently have in our books. So I think it's important that this thing actually should be changed, and that's the essence of actually having this thing today. Now, Honorable Speaker, I also may want to also refer ourselves to the AU Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. In fact, on Article 8, which Gambia is yet to sign, but on Article 8 also talks about personal data and the scope on which these things can be monitored and stored. It basically tells you a guide. So for me, personally, what I see here is this is basically trying to give the government at least a guide on what to do when issues of security concern actually comes in. It's just a guidance that they have to follow. First, who are you to collect this data? Number two, do you have to get permission? Yes. Where do you get permission? From a judge. From there, the judge will also know why are you collecting? Who are you collecting from? What is your name? So I think these are all procedural things that the law is actually trying to correct as opposed to what we currently have in the Communication Act. Now, we all know about caricature. If you have to, prosecute all people that are doing some caricature on social media, I think the courthouse will just, it's impossible to do. But that's what we have. So we said, now, you know what, let's remove it. And I think it's important in a democratic society. I'm sure some of you will remember one newspaper we had here called, I think it was The Observer. They normally have this thing they call Mr. Owl. Sometimes they caricature something. But for me, I look at it as it's fun. You know what I mean? But the current law says, well, if they do it, they could be prosecuted. But we are saying, no, this is a democratic society. Let's do away with all those draconian laws, and let's bring in things that would actually help us to think. Let's debate some of these things. And that's exactly what it's trying to do. And that's the reason when you look at 138A, basically is the procedure for interception. Right now, the current laws, basically there is no procedure. They could just jump and then start to monitor you, start do whatever they want to do with the information. Who does nothing? But now it's telling you there's a procedure before you can do that. Whether it's the NIA, whether it's the police, or whether whoever it is, this law is telling you that there's a procedure that you actually have to follow. If you don't, then what you're trying to collect may be useless. And for me, that's the way actually I see it. But I'm sure when we get to the debate proper, to some of these clauses, well, we can debate and agree on to do that. But for me, I think, Honorable Speaker, it's important that we have a proper procedure in personal data protection and how do we have access to those information is really very important. So that me and everybody else in this country will know, well, these are the right things to do in terms of the security sector. Now, for those of us who are service providers, also, the law will tell us exactly what we need to do. When do we do that? Because right now, if Honorable from Binta Karanani, for example, if he files a complaint on the current law, if he files a complaint about me doing certain things with, that himself alone is giving authority to the security agency to monitor what I'm actually doing. That's the current law. But this thing is saying, no, that's not proper. Let's do it in a more democratic way. And that, for me, that's the way I see it. And I think it's essential that we change some of our laws when it doesn't really work. Because we live in an electronic age, and things are moving very fast. And the issue with data protection, data ownership, I think is a real debate in this world. And I think a few days ago, I was one of the panels in Berlin talking about internet governance. And this is one of the most critical issues we actually have. How do we govern it? Who is the owner? Where is it? And remember last year, I was with some people from the Justice Ministry in Ethiopia. When I asked the question, the president of Facebook, who owns this data you guys are collecting? Where is the data stored? And the person just stood and said, well, I don't know where it is stored. Who owns it? We can debate it. Can you imagine? These are things that they are collecting from all of us. And they're saying, now the debate is like, who owns the data? Do I own it? Does the Gambia government actually own it? Is it owned by Facebook? Who owns it? And just this morning, for those of you that actually use Instagram, they've changed the rules of the game. And they're asking you to agree to continue to use the service. And if you say no, you cannot use the service. And basically, it's all centered around data protection and privacy. So I think, Honorable Speaker, I think this is a good thing. But I think there is more that needs to be done in this particular act. There's more that needs to be done, especially cybersecurity and personal data protection. There's a lot more laws we actually have to change on this particular thing. But at least, again, this is a good start, but I expect more from the Minister in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Member for Jara East.
Madam, thank you very much for the floor. I thank the mover for coming up with this bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, lest we forget that we've come out from a difficult past where freedom of speech was muzzled and where press freedom was thrown under the bus, severely restricted. Madam Speaker, communication is a human rights issue, and it's as old as humanity. We must communicate as human beings, but the extent to which we communicate must be placed under guards and fences. That is, we must have rules and regulations as we relate. Madam Speaker, no one has the right to insult without any reason. And I think this bill has just come to address that, taking into account the difficult past we emerged from. Madam Speaker, journalists played an important role in the development of any nation. Madam Speaker, for far too long, our media infrastructure has been yearning for press freedom, for freedom of expression. And I hope this bill has come to enlarge that freedom as opposed to contracting it. Madam Speaker, we must communicate and we must relate. I have no doubt, after having explained the objects and reasons, that this August Assembly will give their blessing. Because what I'm doing right now is an act of communication. And we are dealing with communication. So, Honorable Minister, let your fears be allayed for the fact that we are communicating. And the bill has to do with communication. Honorable Speaker, human rights are very important. People must have that latitude to relate their feelings unfettered. But the extent to which we relay our feelings must be guarded. Information is power. Information is money. Madam Speaker, these two variables are very important, money versus power. So there is need for us to draw a fine line. It is my inalienable right to express my opinion. But the extent to which I'm given the liberty to express my opinion must be within the pale of decency, Madam Speaker. It must be within the pale of decency. I have no right to insult your person, but you have no right to insult my person. If I insult your person, I have overstepped my bounds. Humanity is more than that. So there is need to police information before it is dispensed. Because information is like a bullet. Once you release it, you can never get it back. Madam Speaker, the social media, it will also help us to regulate the social media. We have right to surf through the net, but the extent to which we surf through the net must be done responsibly. It must not infringe on the rights of others. Because where your right stops, that's where mine starts. So you must never be oblivious of the fact that once you vomit a statement, you can never get it back. So there is need for us to be very cautious before we say anything. Madam Speaker, the success of any government is primarily measured by the degree of free speech that is entertained. No government will score a point that is bent on muzzling, that is bent on trying to guard the mouth or the feelings of its citizens. People must be allowed to ventilate their feelings. And one of the ways to ventilate our feelings is to do it responsibly, as opposed to the opposite. Therefore, the lot is on us to do that, because we belong to the civilized lot. No man has the right to trade invective language against your fellow human beings, and unguarded language, for that matter. So this bill, Madam Speaker, has come to address such anomalies. Honorable Minister, I would like to know what constitutes a violation of free speech. I know you will explain it later, but there is need to know the pros and cons. Because some people might have the feeling that even if you are doing your private conversation, it could be, that's one of my worries. If you can further elaborate. But for the fact that this bill is before this August Assembly, I have no doubt. Because what we are doing now, our work is we are communicating. And I don't think it will serve as a stumbling block for this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Birkama North. Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Information Communication Amendment Bill 2019 has come to make certain amendments in the Information Communication Act. The intent, of course, would be to give us a better law compared to the previous existing one. the objects and reasons advanced to provide adequate checks and procedures for monitoring, intercepting, storing of information into communication for surveillance purposes. And the other, that is the deletion of Section 173, that is regarded as a draconian law, even though we don't have the original text with us. But we are quite comfortable when it is stated that that section is a draconian law and needs to be deleted. I think I'm very comfortable with that. I see that very positive. Draconian is negative. That portion of the law is quite negative and will not do any positive thing on us. And that is very welcoming as far as this bill is concerned. Well, the first part of it, that has to do with communication for surveillance purpose. I think that is related to Section 138 or Section 3, where 138 has been inserted with the following subsections. The word surveillance was quite bordering in the Second Republic. I am one who had never been very comfortable because I used to say I had been under serious surveillance throughout. I had been under surveillance. That word alone requires for the relevant committee to thoroughly study the relevant sections under that new sections inserted as for how the manner informations regarding people or institutions will be subjected to surveillance. We had a very bad experience, and we hope such would not be repeated. It is not my role to be digesting that. I think there's a committee responsible to do that. And I must seriously urge that committee to do your work diligently to give us what the bill intends to do so, better laws. The laws that are not going to be meant to suppress, to put the people back again in the culture of fear in this country. My honorable committee or able committee, I urge you to do your homework as far as this particular area is concerned. I share the same view with honorable member for Banjul North. Partly, I see a positive move. I'm very comfortable with the deletion of the draconian law, but any area that has to be focusing on intercepting information, trying to put surveillance, is something that one has to critically study. And I don't have that legal mind to make my conclusion here. This is an issue of law. If I want to do so, I may not be doing justice to the people and to myself, who is ignorant, totally ignorant of law. I'm very much concerned and worried. With that word alone, I was very uncomfortable. And if I still see it, I'll still stand to say I may feel uncomfortable. That's my position. Thank you.
Honorable Member for Woolly East.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what we are told in this amendment bill is to delete cap 7403 and insert a new section 138A, which deals with the procedure for interception. And the procedure is here. I think many people have looked at it. The National Security Agency or Investigating Authority under Section 138, which intends to monitor, intercept, store information, or intrude into communications for surveillance purposes, shall make an application to the High Court prior to doing so. This is in short giving the courts to give authority to the state to invade the privacy of citizens. But Honorable Speaker, according to Section 19 of the Constitution, there is this protection of right to personal liberty. We all know that section, as well as Section 23 of the Constitution, which is dealing with privacy. And I read, no person shall be subject to interference with the privacy of his or her home, correspondence, or communications, except as is in accordance with law and is necessary in a democratic society, in the interest of national security, public safety, or the economic well-being of the country. So, Honorable Speaker, if somebody suspects that I have offended him legally, or I have committed a crime, he will see reports to the police, and the police arrest me. Within 3 hours, they tell me why they have arrested me, and I have a right to a lawyer, and they also continue to do their investigation and take me to court. And there the court decides what they should do, whether to adjourn the case for them to investigate and so on. All that is left to the court. So all those things are here. Yes. Now, Section 25, that is freedom of speech. If you go to Section 25 of the Constitution, it says, every person shall have the right to A, freedom of speech and expression, which shall include freedom of the press and other media. B, freedom of thought, conscience, and belief, which shall include academic freedom, and so on. All of that is there. So now, if somebody thinks I am going to commit a crime, a cyber crime, for example, the case is taken to court for them to give them the power to put me under surveillance. And when they are doing that, I will not be present. I wouldn't know. I've not seen anything here which says the person should be present when they are doing that, or they should communicate to the person. So the courts give them the authority, and they put me on the surveillance. And therefore, the state continues to monitor what I say, what I write, and all this without me knowing that they are doing that. That is really a violation of our freedoms. Honorable Speaker, what we are here to do now in this period is to unravel the laws that makes the dictatorship to function for the last 22 years, frightening the citizens and silencing the citizenry, the society, instead of turning our country into a democratic state. And I am inclined to believe that this law is just creating a room for state witch hunt. The past regime has done its witch hunt, and this one is also another way of witch hunting the citizens. Even before I do something, then I'll be put under surveillance. If the state feels that I've done something, it's their duty to investigate, use all the laws to ensure that I am properly investigated. And then they take me to court, and the court takes place. And then the court decides what is going to happen. So what I have seen here is that a good thing is done, a very good thing is done by removing CAP 7403, which is talking about all these things that were happening. If you commit spreading false news against the government, incite disaffection, instigate, caricature, abuse. If somebody says somebody is a very ugly person, then, that's a crime. The person is, a bad-looking, like a dog, that's also a crime, and so on and so forth. So, Honorable Speaker, I cannot, with my consent, support such an amendment. I would have welcomed the removal of CAP 74, but to put citizens under surveillance, to monitor what they put in their emails, in their Facebooks, in their private laptops, to give permission to people to intrude the privacy of citizens will not satisfy the human rights provisions that we are trying to safeguard. And as a member of the Human Rights Committee of this National Assembly, I cannot give my support to such an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Nominated member, Honorable Gassama.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. This time around, there is a bill titled Information and Communication Amendment Bill 2019. Honorable Speaker, it is categorically stated in Section 25 of the 1997 Constitution that every person shall have the right to freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of tranquility, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, and etc., etc. This is a constitutional mandate given to every citizen of this country. Honorable Speaker, I know the media, they played a very vital role in this country. And nobody can dispute that. They are very important institutions in terms of disseminating information to the public. They played a very vital role. Nobody can dispute that. But there is one thing is important. One of the philosophers says, all journalists are broadcasters, but not all broadcasters are journalists. It's logic. Everybody wants to be a journalist. Do you have the professional, the ethic of journalism? Do you understand that? That's why we are saying that the information, we need to monitor it. It's important. I'm not saying that we should scrutinize or we should monitor the information, the communication system of the country. Because communication is important. Because any government that exists in this world cannot be operating without information. It's very, very important. It's based on intelligence. You need to monitor it. It's important. But I'm not also saying that to suppress. That also is, let's count that out. You cannot suppress them, because if the moment you suppress them, you are violating their right. That is why the Constitution is always telling us that no authority has the mandate to make a new law which may deprive a person of a right that is already acquired. It means that every citizen acquired the same right. We all acquire the same right. That is important. But to deprive somebody's right again, because where, as many people stated here, where my right stopped, and that's where your rights begin. It's important. So we all are equal before the law of the land. To say that we need to have information under communication amendment bill 2019. I'm not saying that I'm going to reject it. No. I cannot reject it. I'm not also saying that I'm going to support it now, because what I just want to suggest was for us to refer it to the committee for further scrutiny properly. It has to be scrutinized properly. It's important. Because I have an clarification from the minister. I want the minister, if the minister can clarify that portion for me, like monitoring, intercepting. At that portion, maybe I don't understand that portion very well. How to go about it is important for us to be briefed before taking any decision on this particular law. It's important there. That's why I'm saying that I'm just making my own suggestion as that of now. But it's important for us to scrutinize it properly. That is important. And for us to also have a system, because that's why we are saying the system change. We need to have a better system. That is important in terms of disseminating information to the public. It's important. Misleading information can lead this country to anarchy. It's all possible. Misleading information, let it be accurate information. That is very important. And suppression of the fact can also lead this country to intractable conflict. We need to
study these documents very carefully. It's important for the best interest of this country. Let us be nationalist, whatever we are doing, and constitutionalist. Partisan, we put it aside. That is not important. As far as Gambia is concerned, Gambia is bigger than any of us. Honorable Speaker, I will take my seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Member for Woolly West.
Thank you. I think we have a problem generally in this country because we refuse to apply principles that we establish ourselves. Somebody raised the question yesterday about whether only a particular bill was gazetted. Now, what is the essence of gazetting a bill? People don't understand that. It's not just for a museum piece. It has a fundamental purpose. It is to make it known to the public that this piece of legislation is going to come. What do you think about it? So that we debate it. But tragically, even those who consider themselves literate in this society, the Gazette is not accessible to them. So most of them don't even know the existence of the Gazette. So there is never a debate about a bill. This would have been an interesting debate publicly. So it means something fundamental has to change. Not only to be gazetted, but it must be published in a newspaper. That's what people read, those who are literate in this country. They know all the newspapers. So any bill, any piece of legislation that is to come must be published in a newspaper before it is discussed in Parliament. So that those who are literate, of course the light public is out of it. Again, my problem. Legislation is not meant for just a class of citizens, it's meant for a people of the country. So everybody must know about a legislation that is incoming. And that's why it is in the Gazette, but the Gazette is only accessible to few people. Only few people know about it. So the youth population, let's say 80 to 90% of the people don't know anything about it. And the law is made for everybody in the country. But the vast majority of people don't even know about what we are doing here. So otherwise, this would not have come here. If it were debated publicly, this would not have come here. Because I'm at pains when I read, you say, the Honorable Attorney General said there is a draconian portion that is going to be dealt with. But when I read this, to provide adequate checks and procedures for the monitoring, intercepting, and storing of information into communication for surveillance purposes. There is not anything draconian more than that. That means anybody who knows this will be afraid to communicate. Because what sieve are you going to use to sieve what is to be stored for surveillance and what is not to be stored? What sieve are you going to use? That is not clear here. And the other thing that we always forget, laws are genetically, no law is meant for punishment. Laws are meant to preempt and guide. But any law which has intent, genetically has intent to punish, is no law. And the fertile ground for any law to survive is information. Those for whom law is meant must understand the generality of that law before it can become law or it can be respected. And we don't do all this. We have radio station, we have a television station. These instruments have never been used to serve the people of this country. These instruments must be used to free, to liberate our people. But they are used to enslave them. Because if you hide the information from people, you are enslaving them. So, for me, the objects and the reasons are themselves draconian. Because it stifles my freedom to express myself And I don't know which measure, which yardstick you are going to use to determine whether what I'm saying, what is bad in it, for you to put aside for surveillance, and what is not bad. I don't know how you are going to do this. How humanly possible are you going to do this? People are angry by what happens in the fora. But because there is no culture. Culture people, help people to be cultured. We have to educate people. That is what is going to help us to have a decent society, not laws. Wallahi, laws don't make any society be decent. Sometimes, in fact, they increase criminality. Some people are very happy to go to prison because outside is as prison as inside the prison. 2 prisons. At least when you are in one, you are protected because at least nobody has access to you. The larger prison is very fragile. You can be attacked anyhow. So if you want to be free from that, you go to the prison where you have nobody has access to you. So this is the problem. So, madam, for me, this amendment is dangerous. It's taking us back to 22 years of that madness. So, I think we have to rethink. I'm glad that this is going to be referred to a committee. I'm happy. Since it's not going to be enacted now, it's going to be referred to a committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, but that is the procedure. Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. Honorable Speaker, let me inform this August gathering. We were born before computer. So as a result, all these things doesn't bother me much. But, Honorable Speaker, no decent person should insult people and use social media to insult people. Not to talk of insulting people at the highest level is not correct. I'm against it, and then we should try to make sure that we train our kids and put culture into them to do away with this thing. But, Honorable Speaker, this bill, this Information and Communication Amendment Bill 2019, Honorable Minister of Justice is here. I think we need a clarity on this bill. Honorable Speaker, we all remember the past 22 years, what's happened in this country. An institution was given empowered to harass people, to torture people, to kill people. That is the NIA. We all are living witness to that. Now with this bill again, they are saying national security agents to investigate. Who are they? Who are they? They are giving them more power. And this bill wanted to take us where we came out. Is wrong. Honorable Speaker, is wrong. I think we should not think about this. We should not even think that way in this country now. We are free from that. We all know what's happened. So certainly this amendment section 138A should be completely removed from this bill, as far as I'm concerned. Should be completely removed. Honorable Minister, with due respect, this one should be removed completely, even if it doesn't go to the committee. I, for one, personally, Honorable Speaker, I cannot imagine myself to support this type of bill in this country with this new dispensation. I cannot. If I'm somebody insults me, that is rudeness of that person. And as public officers, we are subjected to criticism, not to insult, but criticism. So as a result, Honorable Minister of Justice, with all due respect, as far as I'm concerned, I cannot in any way give power to an institution here which suppressed us in this country. which harass us, which kill us. Because when you talk about national security agents, who are they? Who are they? I take them as NIA. Now they call themselves SIS. Gathering information, intelligence, surveillance for what? Gambian citizens at this particular time, in this new dispensation, I cannot imagine myself in supporting this bill. Honorable Speaker, I thank you very much for giving me the floor, and that's my contribution.
Thank you. Actually, the next stage is for the Honorable Minister nominated. Just a second. We should adjourn at 6 o'clock. It's getting to 5:30, so I would suggest that somebody move so that we just finish today and start off. Can somebody move a motion that we sit beyond 6? Upper Salom, thank you.
Thank you. I rise to move a motion for us to sit beyond 6 o'clock.
Call the motion.
Observe that I'm not feeling well today, but I have to manage, yes. Thank you. Seconder? Willie was seconded. Oh, I thought he said counter motion. Okay, thank you. Yes, it has been moved and seconded that we sit beyond 6 o'clock. Now I'll give the floor to, before the question, Honorable nominated member Ndeyasin wants to take the motion to sit. You didn't put the question. On the motion to sit. On the motion to sit beyond 6 o'clock. Yes, sorry, it has been moved and seconded that the assembly sits beyond 6 o'clock. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. So the ayes have it. We can now proceed. Yes, Honorable nominated member Ndeyasin, have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ma. The Information and Communication Amendment 2019. The word that disturbs me is to intrude. Intruding. What does that mean? I checked the dictionary, and then my mind came to this South African athlete when he killed his fiancée, and we asked him, why did you kill her? He said he thought that it was an intruder. So that being the case, I think if we put something like intrude in our amendment bill, I think we are creating something. Have we forgotten what we used to hear during the TRRC when they say that the security comes to their houses, found them in their beds, taking them out? Is that not intruding? And I don't think now the Gambians will allow any security. For me, if an intruder comes to my house, I will cutlass him or her. Because to me, it's violating the Constitution. And information sharing, Madam Speaker, is very, very crucial. It's important. We need to share information. Go to the television stations in our neighbors. You watch Kucha's show, and you are talking about caricature. To me, Kucha is caricaturing everybody in Senegal, even in the Gambia. So when this happens, is it that we are going to Senegal to bring Kucha here to prosecute him? I think these are issues that we really have to talk about. It's true. Nobody wants to be insulted. And I always talk about it here. Insult is not the thing that we need in the Gambia that we know. Not only in the Gambia, but everywhere. If you insult somebody, then you are not doing the right thing. But what should our parties do? What should we do as far as politics is concerned? What should we do as far as the Ministry of Communication and Information is concerned? They should come up with mechanisms. They should share information with people. They should communicate with people. If that happens, nothing like this will happen. I think these are the issues, and then many things have been said. I don't want to really repeat myself, but to me, information sharing is what we need. There was a time, just recently, somebody called me, telling me, where are you? I am at home, but I have an information to give you, but I am calling you from the telephone, and I want us to meet somewhere where you know that I'll be able to discuss issues with you. So if that being the case, then where are we? Even now, to use our telephones to call people is a problem. And as far as we come up with this bill and amend it and pass it, then we are just creating something else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this point in time, may I invite the Honorable Attorney General and Minister for Justice to respond to the issues raised and wind up the debate. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to engage. Madam Speaker, I suspect very strongly that because my Badibunka sons and in this hall are hungry, they have influence on Julie. All the other honorable members, even though we're having this exchange after lunch, but I blame them nevertheless. And perhaps I should start on a lot lighter note. The honorable member for Woolly West is not here, but he raised an important issue about putting in the newspapers and radios the Gazette. And he's absolutely right that the objective of the Gazette is to make a public announcement about the bills that are expected to be tabled so that it will generate debate. However, I just wanted to share a little anecdote about that process. There was a time when my ministry experienced a lot of delay in advertising certain positions. It was actually for the National Human Rights Commission. It took us about a month to advertise the position because the newspapers that we were used to dealing with would not advertise for us anymore because we owed them a lot of money that was outstanding. And because we couldn't pay, we have to always go back to finance for VMN, I don't know how to call that. We couldn't advertise those positions. Just to say that while we would ideally like to advertise and do all of the things that are necessary to engage the public, we are constrained by resources. That was just a little anecdote to show some of the challenges that we face when we want to publish these things in the newspapers. Luckily, they understood our situation and allowed us to advertise, even though we didn't pay at that time, and we subsequently settled that. So perhaps maybe we need to encourage members of the media to be more generous and flexible when it comes to government, certainly my ministries, interactions with them. But more fundamentally, I think this bill seeks to address two principal issues here. The first one seems to be less controversial. It is for the deletion of Section 173A, which I believe was held to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court last year or maybe end of the year before. But that is not controversial. We want to provide the space for people to express themselves without fear of being prosecuted. I agree with the Honorable Member for Serekunda that a law that is difficult or almost impossible to enforce is as good as no law. But the fact that it remains in our statute books continue to provide a threat against the exercise of the right to freedom of speech. And so the deletion basically, I think, blame myself partly for this animated debate because I should have ensured that the parent legislation was made available to honorable members, except that I had assumed, Honorable Speaker, that because this is a National Assembly, copies of these legislations would be here. But I have taken note of the advice, and we will endeavor next time to make sure that we provide the Parent Act.
Honorable Minister, we also have financial constraints in printing as many copies.
That is well noted, Honorable Speaker. On Section 138A and our proposal to insert it after Section 138 of the Information and Communications Act is extremely justified. Every intelligence agency around the world gathers intelligence. That's what they do. It's not for the benefit of any particular person or group. It's not only to prevent subversive activities against the state, although it includes that. It is simply to fight crime. Crime that comes in different forms, different shapes, particularly modern day crime. Cybercrime, terrorism, transnational crime, money laundering. A lot of the activities that are undertaken to fight crime are not visible to us on a daily basis. They are fought in cyberspace these days, as we all know. And so it is not uncommon for security agencies to have the power to intercept, monitor, conduct surveillance on communications with a view to fighting crime. And that is what Section 138 of the information, not 138A, Section 138, I'll come to the proposed amendment. I just want to share with the Honorable this, and I read. The national security agencies and investigating authorities may monitor, intercept, and store communications, and the authority, when exercising its powers relating to frequency monitoring or otherwise, may include into communication for surveillance purposes. Subsection 2 says, and I will not read all of it, if an alleged threat of murder or physical violence or blackmail occurs, the user or subscriber threatened may in writing authorize the investigating authority to intercept telephone conversations, other information and communications, email messages, and any other form of communications on his or her end terminal to investigate and to identify the persons involved in communications within the period of time set in the user's authorization. They already have this power. They can exercise this power based on this law. And that is what has been happening here over the past 22 years under the previous administration. They can tap, they can monitor, they can access your email remotely because they are empowered to do so by the law. And what we are saying now with this proposal, and if they did, all things being equal, if they did, there's not much any one of us can do because they have this power and it is unrestricted. What we want is to provide judicial oversight, a judicial check against the potential abuse of that power. Without this proposal, the law remains the same. They can access, they can tap, they can survey, they can do what they like in accordance with this law, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. With this proposal, we are saying they shouldn't be able to do so without an oversight mechanism. And who better to provide this check against abuse? It's the courts. An independent judicial body that can look. If you go through the provisions, you will see the detailed, elaborate procedure that is required for a judge to grant approval for them to conduct the surveillance. And the consequences of not following the judge's order is that whatever evidence is obtained as a result of their activities without the judge's approval may be inadmissible in court. That means if they refuse to follow the judge's order, or if after the enactment of this law they don't get the approval of a judge and they conduct wiretapping, they conduct surveillance, and we discover that a crime has been committed and we go to court, we cannot rely on that evidence because it would have been illegally obtained. And so what we are asking you to do is actually to help yourselves. Because without this introduction, they will continue to rely on these powers that they have as provided by the law. That is the point of this new proposal. We want to provide a check against abuse of this power. We want to provide judicial oversight for our intelligence authorities, because we, like you, are also traumatized by our experience of the previous administration. And so everything that you have said here about the right to respect freedom of expression and the right to privacy is exactly what this new proposal seeks to reinforce. Not the opposite. Not the opposite. But it's up to you. This is the beauty of democracy. If you feel that this new proposal seeks to limit the right to privacy, well, it's your call. All I can say is that it does not. It has the exact opposite effect. Because as of now, the right to privacy is severely curtailed by this unchecked power that they have. Thank you all, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, in accordance with Clause 68, Subclause 1 of the Standing Orders, the Bill, Information and Communications Amendment Bill 2019 is hereby referred to the Assembly Business Committee for committal to the relevant committee. Thank you. So can we proceed with the next bill, class?
National Human Rights Commission Amendment Bill by the Attorney General and Minister for Justice.
May I invite the Honorable Attorney General, yes, to move the motion. That's the National Human Rights Commission Amendment.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I beg to move that the bill entitled the National Human Rights Commission Amendment Bill 2019 be read the second time. Honorable Speaker, this bill seeks to streamline and provide greater clarity in the internal organization and operations of the National Human Rights Commission. It seeks to amend the tenure of office of the commissioners in line with practices on the continent, and it also seeks to provide a clear delineation between the functions of the Secretariat and the commissioners. Honorable Speaker, I therefore move that this House adopt the National Human Rights Commission Amendment Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder. For any brevet.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the motion. Honorable Speaker, with your permission, please allow me to contribute further to thank the Honorable Minister for coming with very smart objects and reasons. The first objects and reasons, which reads the bill seeks to streamline and provide greater clarity and internal organization and operations of the human rights, of the National Human Rights Commission. It seeks to amend the tenure of office of the commissioners in line with practices on the continent. The bill also seeks to provide a clear delineation between the functions of the Secretariat and the commissioners. The latter bit of it is so important. When two persons work together without knowing exactly what their limitations are, and this can lead to duplication of office and internal conflicts. So the bill, which has been carried out by the objects and reasons, are very smart in making the separation of powers and functions are key, so that they can work hand in tandem without any further problems. Besides that, Honorable Speaker, I want to throw my support behind the bill. But I want also the Honorable Minister to give an explanation with us the tenure of office. The commissioners are entitled to a tenure of 4 years, while the chairperson is entitled to a tenure of 5 years. What's the rationale behind the separation of term of office between two people who intend to work together? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the bill entitled National Human Rights Commission Amendment Bill 2019 be read a second time. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. So the ayes have it. Please, clerk, can the bill be read a second time?
National Human Rights Commission Amendment Bill 2019.
Thank you. In accordance with clause 67(1) of the standing orders, I'll now open the floor for debate on the general merits and principle of the bill. Honorable members who wish to take part may do so now. Yes, nominated member, Dayasin, thank you. And then, can you take Serekunda, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma, and thank you very much, Honorable Minister, once again. To me, I think this is a very important bill, which we really need to show people that, well, there is nothing in this world, but if you don't have human rights, I don't think it will be good for us. And then, Honorable Speaker, I would like to put to the attention of the Honorable Minister that today, December 3rd, is World Disability Day, and we haven't seen anything here as far as the Disability Act is concerned. So hopefully, by next year, God willing, by next December 3rd, hopefully we will see the disability bill in the National Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Member for Serekunda.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The objects and reasons for the bill is institution building. And once you commence operation, as the National Human Rights Commission has actually done, then you begin to see gaps. And it is important for the gaps to be filled to ensure greater efficiency and effectiveness in the operation of the institution. So what we are being told is that a secretariat and the commission and their various functions would have to be delineated and the gaps filled. And that is one of the objectives. The issue of the tenure of office of the commissioners is also raised and apparently it is aligning it to standards of practice. What is important is for us constantly to be given documentation so that the comparisons that were made would also be deposited and we would have that memory, because we are simply accepting what we've been told. But essentially looking at the term of the chair as well as the other commissioners, it would make good sense to have some element of continuity in terms of a break when certain members of the commission are moving and others coming in. So an instrument has to be created to ensure that there is someone with institutional memory to ensure some element of continuity. So that is essentially acceptable. So in that regard, Honorable Speaker, one would say that we look at the details, but as has been mentioned, it is always important to have the Parent Act so that members will see clearly the dots and the commas and the I's and the dots so that we know exactly.
Make sure that we get all the copies before then. Honorable Member for Brikama North, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I don't think this will be a controversial bill in the sense that being a member of the Human Rights Committee, and we had our engagement with the committee, I think this was one of the issues that they brought to our attention in order to enhance the smooth running of the commission. However, I would simply like clarification on Section 6, amendment of Section 11, which has to do with Section 11 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting subsection 2 and substituting for its following. Since we don't have the Parent Act, I'm of interest to know what actually is in subsection 2 that has been deleted and replaced by the following in this bill. The President shall, after consultation with the Public Service Commission, appoint the members of the Commission in accordance with the procedure specific in the schedule to this Act. I want to recall the list of the applicants. About 9 were shortlisted and forwarded to the National Assembly. National Assembly requested for the CVs of all these applicants. I'm referring to the members of the Commission. And thereafter, we thoroughly vetted and we shortlisted 5 out of the 9 for the onward appointment by the President. That's why I'm interested to know what was embedded in subsection 11(2) that warranted deletion. Whether the National Assembly still doesn't have the role to play as we did in the previous appointment. Now it is in this way, consultation with the Public Service Commission. Where is the position of the National Assembly? That's the only concern I have. Otherwise, it's a bill that is meant to enhance the smooth running of the Commission. But this procedure of appointment, I'm very much interested to know.
Thank you. Any interventions? No? Okay. Honorable Minister, can you just clarify the few points that have been raised? I think... Oh, you want a short break for coffee or what?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. On the first clarification, I believe the honorable member for Serakunda has adequately clarified. Just to confirm that what he has said about the need to have someone with institutional memory for continuity is the reason why the chair is given a longer tenure and the rest are not. Otherwise, you have a situation where, as in this case, where all 5 of them are appointed on the same day, and if their tenure ends, all 5 of them leave. And there will be no one there to basically pass on the institutional memory to the incoming team. So the extending the chair's tenure for 1 extra year allows for a transition to the next group of commissioners who will be in office at the end of the term of the current. That is the reason. And in terms of the second